All right, welcome back to The Cross Connection. Now, you'll likely hear more of this, let's just call it what it is, garbage from other Republicans this weekend at the conservative gathering known as CPAC as they continue to stoke fears over their latest culture war boogeyman, critical race theory. But actually, what they want is to whitewash the truth about America, the one that they think already exists and the one that we are trying to bring into existence. Meanwhile, this week, the news surrounding Nikole Hannah-Jones's tenure fight with the University of North Carolina was an actual example of what the theory preaches, that racism is so entrenched in every aspect of our lives that an overqualified Pulitzer Prize winner and MacArthur genius had to threaten a lawsuit in order to be given begrudgingly the same opportunity as white people who came before her in that position. And ultimately, she chose an HBCU instead. She is joining the Mecca, Howard University, along with Ta-Nehisi Coates, who is to culture what Marvin Gaye is to soul, what Nasir Jones is to hip-hop, and what Jean-Michel Basquiat is to art. Joining me now is the brand new inaugural Knight Chair in Race and Investigative Journalism at Howard University, the wonderful Nikole Hannah-Jones, and Sterling Brown Chair in the Department of English at Howard University, Ta-Nehisi Coates. I am so thrilled to have you both here. Nikole, you are everything, my friend. I'm just so happy for you and thrilled, and congratulations to the students at Howard because they are in for a treat this fall. You've really been in a lot of battles. I mean, it's really started with the launch of the 1619 Project to this introduced debate around critical race theory, and now this fight around tenure. I'm just curious from you, what has this process taught you about the current state of America today?
Well, thanks for having us both on. Excited to be here with you. What it taught me is that the work that Ta-Nehisi and I do, the work that you do, is vital because we are still fighting against these instincts that were baked into a country that began with chattel slavery. So, all of the arguments that we're seeing that we don't come from a fundamentally racist country, our past is not a racist past, that racial inequality, anything that we see today when it comes to racial inequality is simply a matter of individual choices. All of that is being disproven by what we're seeing across our country, not just with my tenure fight. That's the least of our worries in this country, but the wave of voter suppression laws, the wave of anti-free speech laws that are trying to stop us from learning the true history of our country. All of these efforts are really affirming and confirming why we do the work that we do, which is when it comes to our politics, our culture, our society, race continues to be an organizing factor.
Absolutely. And we're seeing that play out before us. We saw the Confederate statues come down in Virginia just a few hours ago. So, Ta-Nehisi, I want to ask you, because we were talking in the last block about a lack of allies sometimes among Black women. And I want to say to you that one thing that was so endearing about this was to see our counterpart jump in this battle to help defend, and your role in this entire situation with Nikole, which so many of us talked about offline. There are some people who feel that we're preaching to the choir by going to HBCUs, taking two talents like you, going to HBCUs. Like, a lot of these Black students may already know about this history. If it is a white person's job to educate themselves on the truth about this country, whose job is it to educate them? What's your thought?
So if I could just answer that question about preaching to the choir. The first thing is teaching is not preaching. And I don't even know that preaching is what people construe preaching as. But when I went to Howard University, there were conceptions about Blackness, about myself that I had. There were private conversations that I needed to have outside of the conversations that we have with white people, private debates that needed to be had, debates about sexuality, debates about gender, debates about colorism, geography, et cetera. And you don't really get to have those conversations if you're trying to prove to people your humanity when they don't believe in your basic intellect. You spend all your time in what's supposed to be an education, and what's supposed to be educational, trying to prove to people that you're actually worthy, fighting battles, with them. There are different axes of our existence besides Black and white. Different aspects of our humanity besides Black and white. And one of the beautiful things is when you're in a place where you're surrounded by, other intelligent, brilliant, Black people, that card of intellect that card of humanity is off the table. And what's left is all the other questions about yourself that you had. And so I just really object to that, because it presumes that the only question and the only debates, worth having are with white people. And I just strongly disagree with that.
I echo that. Nicole, I'm curious your thoughts on that same thing. So I got a lot of emails and tweets and DMs of people making the same point, asking that question about, I take your point, Ta-Nehisi, preaching is not teaching. But I wonder your thoughts on that same sentiment, Nicole.
I feel the same way. Let's be clear. The 1619 Project didn't only teach white people something about our history and who we are as Americans. Black Americans have also been largely deprived of a true understanding of a lot of this history as well. But also, I'm going to be a journalism teacher. I'm not coming there to bring racial justice to a campus. I'm coming to Howard the same way I was coming to the University of North Carolina, was to teach journalism, to teach the fundamentals of journalism, investigative journalism, and how to infuse journalism with a historical and racial understanding. Certainly, journalism students at Howard University deserve that type of instruction. And also, they are having to learn journalism now at institutions like HBCUs that are chronically underfunded, that have never received their fair share of funding, that don't have massive endowments like an institution like the University of North Carolina. So when people say that, I think, one, they fundamentally understand what my role on a campus would be, what Ta-Nehisi's role on a campus would be, but also that we are bringing resources that these students have long deserved, but haven't often received.
Well, you bring up a really good point. First of all, both of your joining Howard University comes with a $20 million donation by the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation. But I really like the point you make about teaching journalism. I think that's something that's so important. And as we feed the diversity pipelines in newsrooms, I think your input will be invaluable. So as people watch you go through this, Nicole, for all of the colored girls who consider journalism when Twitter was just not enough, what is your message to them today?
My message is that we are absolutely vital to these institutions, even as they often treat us as if we should feel lucky and blessed to be there. Diversity doesn't matter in newsrooms because it feels good or because it's politically correct. It matters because we simply are unable to cover our country with the truth and accuracy that this moment requires if the only people who have the levers of power in these institutions are the people who have always had the levers of power in this institution. So, I'm no one's diversity hire. I bring something. Black girls bring something very specific to newsrooms, and that's why we deserve to be there, and we deserve to be treated like we deserve to be there.
Absolutely. Ta-Nehisi, I'm curious what made you go back, because not only will you be teaching, you'll also be completing your degree. What made you go back to get your degree?
I always wanted my degree. Always wanted my degree. Like a lot of people, it was an economic crunch. I wasn't the greatest student, but, I didn't want to leave. I had, a job in journalism that was paying, at the time I started as a professional journalist when I was 20 years old. And I had something that I was paying into that I wasn't, at that time particularly good at. Tiffany, if I could take a quick second, though, because I just want to answer something Senator Cotton said that I think is really, really important to this debate, if I could. He asked who would want to defend the country when racism is baked into the Constitution. And I take great offense to that, because the answer to that question is Black people. African Americans have fought in every single war and served in the military in every single military engagement since 1776. My dad served in the military. And so, this notion that, that you have to believe that the United States of America is perfect, that the Constitution is the word of God itself in order to serve in the military is I have nothing else to say except how white of him, how very, very white of him, because there are a lot of us that have never had that privilege to begin with.
Absolutely. Black Americans serve at the highest rate of all racial groups. Indigenous people also serve at the highest rates, right? So folks who have been left out of the social contract have been the primary ones joining the military to uphold it. So it is offensive. My father was a military vet as well. My opening essay about democracy is about my father flying this flag because he was a great patriot of a country that didn't treat him like a man. When people say that, Tom Cotton certainly doesn't care about the facts of history, that for the vast majority of this country, Black people were fighting in a military that segregated them legally until World War II, where Black people had to beg to be allowed to fight for their country, as in the Civil War. It just isn't about a factual rendering of the history, and it is deeply offensive to the disproportionate number of Black and brown veterans that exist in this country.
Well, I'll stick with this for a moment, Nicole, because the first Black Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, was asked about this on Capitol Hill and, really kind of rebuked teaching critical race theory within the Army. What does it say that the first Black Secretary of Defense, felt so strongly about it and kind of sided with the opposition here?
I think that when you are in a leadership position on empire, you uphold empire, and that this is the least surprising stance for him to take. That's how I feel about that.
Yeah.
Ta-Nehisi, I question between the vice president being a HU graduate, the fine arts school being named after Chadwick Boseman, and now the two of you. I'm just curious, how insufferable will all Howard University alumni be for the next forever?
It's a huge problem. It's disgraceful. It's absolutely disgraceful. Between our homecomings, between Showtime Band, between our alumni, all of y'all got a problem. All y'all HBCUs got a problem. But Tiffany, in all seriousness, that's the private dialogue that we have. Those of us who attend and teach at HBCUs. But I am at pains to remind people that Howard University is a part of a community of HBCUs. And as you see, myself and Nicole are going home. I hope those of us who are privileged, those of us who have the ability, because everybody does not have the privilege or the ability, but those of us who can, and want to make the choice to return to HBCUs, that while they're looking at Howard, that they're looking at a Morgan State, that they're looking at a Morehouse, a Spelman, a Dillard, an Xavier, A&T, a FAMU. We are a part of a community. It's often said that Howard is the Black Harvard, but that's actually not enough. We should be in this together, and so that's my feeling about that. Except at homecoming.
And Nicole, this is your first HBCU experience. I have to tell you, it's nothing like the environment. I'm curious what you're most looking forward to about joining the Mecca.
Yeah, I am so excited. I can't even express. I will finally go to homecoming. Ta-Nehisi always told me to go to homecoming, and I said I couldn't bear it because I would just think about all that I hadn't experienced in my life up till then, and I couldn't really claim Howard. And now I can. One of my few regrets in life is that I didn't choose an HBCU for undergraduate. And just to affirm what Ta-Nehisi said, even with the resources that we're bringing to Howard, these are to establish a center that is going to bolster journalism programs across HBCUs. We're working on other partnerships with places like Morehouse, hoping to work with Xavier, hoping to work with Morgan, hoping to work with BAM. We survive because we are not individualistic, but we are a community, and we have to support each other. That's how we survive and thrive, and that's certainly our intention. We're going to Howard, but we hope that will benefit and that we will work with and learn from all of the other great HBCUs in this country.
Well, Nicole, I want to say to you, as a journalist who's navigated newsrooms for almost 2 decades, and as a Black woman who's navigated this world, I thank you for what you did, and it is my honor to stand in solidarity with you always. And Ta-Nehisi, I want to say to you, we're going to start a GoFundMe for a ring light for you. But I am happy that you pulled it off, my friend.
Today.
You look great.
Wow, I thought I was a good ally.
You are a good ally in desperate need of light.
I'm out.
Thank you, Nicole Hannah-Jones and Ta-Nehisi Coates. And I want to shout out our parent company, NBC Universal, for doing its part to help elevate HBCUs. NBCU Academy is investing $6.5 million into a partnership with HBCUs and other institutions serving students of color, including millions of dollars in scholarships.